I think the whole situation is obviously very toxic and very difficult, and I'm sure there are arguments on both sides about this. It seems to me, looking at it from a distance, that the chair, Sophie Chandauka, has is sort of using every possible bit of ammunition because she's been pushed out and is obviously very upset. Um, it also does indicate a sort of terrible issue which you always have with the Sussexes, that any time that anything like this happens, people are jumping up on both sides, either to to defend them or to attack them. And also, somehow it seems that things that they get involved with are therefore always going to be very difficult. And possibly the worrying thing from Prince Harry's point of view, I would say, is that people might think in the end that and I've seen this written a few times, is more trouble than it's worth having him involved for that reason. And it's a shame because this is one of the things, there are two things that he was still doing from his old life for which he was really trained, and when he looks really happy and he's putting something into life. And there's this charity, and the other one, of course, is the Invictus Games. And if he loses that as well, then he's really cut off into his Californian life, which would be a great pity. So I think it is a big problem. And as I say, I'm sure there are issues on both sides, but and everybody has to be, terribly careful whenever they mention anything to do with race issues because it's very complicated and it's very, very sort of sensational, can be very sensational. So I think it is a difficult problem. His support for this particular charity has been something which has been really very important, and also I would argue very important for him. So I think it's a bit sad, really, if he gets cut off. But they talk about. I mean, he himself said, that well, he's only distancing himself from till further notice, and he'll always have been the founder of the charity. And I just wonder whether, he's going to find himself in that awful situation a few times more where, he founded something, set it all up, but because of the way he is now living his life out in California, it seems to be somehow, you know, uh, sort of detrimental, which is a great pity because it shouldn't be like that, but I could see how it could be interpreted in that way. I think that's really the point, is we don't know the ins and outs, and I'm sure that there are very strong arguments on both sides, and obviously, tension has risen on both sides because all the trustees, not just Prince Harry, they've all stepped down for the moment on account of this issue to do with this particular CEO. So, maybe she is very difficult. That's very unfair on Prince Harry. I mean, of all people, and he's always been very conscious about that, and it's a pity. It seems to me that that is one of the cards that people do play when they're in trouble, and Meghan Markle herself has played this card once or twice rather prominently, as you know. So it's unfortunate. I mean, I think that probably we need to let the dust settle a little bit, and maybe in time it will emerge what the real issues are to do with Dr. Chandoka and also the trustees and the direction of the charity and so forth. And as I say, I just hope that the charity itself can go on, because that is surely something which everybody would want to happen. Even an expelled chairman would wish the charity to be in good hands. Personally, of course, very against anyone playing the race card as such, because it seems to me that that's not the issue that's at stake on either side. And there are, as you know, in the times in which we live, a number of similar cards that you can play. You can accuse people of stressing you in the workplace. There are mental health cards that people play. I mean, all these things. I mean, in the end, I mean, maybe at the risk of being old-fashioned, you kind of have to get on with it and get past these things to find out what the real issue is. And if everybody is saying that that this lady has done a bad job and hasn't been running the charity properly, or she feels that the trustees have let her down. I mean, these are the real issues, not the race issue at all. I think probably tempers have got very frayed and things have got rather out of control, to be quite honest. I mean, one of the clips that is shown a lot in connection with this issue is, is where she and Meghan Markle are placed, in a group thing, and that Meghan is sort of moving her on, and this has been used as a sort of a weapon against everybody, which I think again is unfair because they were probably just trying to take a photograph and they just want to get it right. I mean, I think that Harry and Meghan are always under attack for whatever they do, as you know. I mean, we've discussed this at some length over these last weeks, but if when she puts out a cooking program, people say, well, it's not her kitchen. She doesn't give us the ingredients. I mean, I've said it myself, and what's going on? What's this all about? And things. And so everything they do, because they're so much in the limelight, is always sort of heightened and becomes more tense. And where somebody stands in a photograph, frankly, isn't a very big drama. But if the sort of PR team behind it are getting nervous and sort of trying to push people in one direction or another. I mean, this is where it gets into a problem. And this is where I think that Harry and Meghan have got the big problem is that working members of the royal family have an enormous backup team and people who help them and people who advise them and people who sort things out for them. And they don't, they have they're sort of, lone people in a celebrity world and finding their own way and often having to change direction. And so that I'm sure there's a lot of tension in their unit as well, so you can see why their sort of PR people might want to jump on this particular photograph or positioning and things and demand an apology, but it doesn't seem to be really the most valid part of it. I mean, I think if I'm being really really take an overview on it, everything has just got thoroughly out of hand. Who knows? Maybe they can focus on things, but it looks as though at the moment the charity has rather lost its direction because all the trustees have stepped down and the CEO is being removed. So who's running this charity? That's probably really the issue, actually. I do think that Prince Harry, I'm sure I've read and I'm sure that he's extremely upset about the whole thing because this was one of his brainchilds. It's one of the things that he put a lot of energy into. And so the fact that it's all gone wrong and that he might be isolated from it, I'm sure is absolutely devastating. And I'm sure they're all extremely upset. How they handle it, we have to wait and see. But as I say, what I really hope is that something can be resolved and that the charity itself won't suffer too much from what's happening on either side. It just seems to me extremely unfortunate, the whole thing. So I'm sure that they're devastated, and probably it's not really appropriate for her to get involved and speak out at this point, and she hasn't done so. So that's probably a good thing. I'm not sure she's very good on irony, to be quite honest. I think she's always moving forward in her own way. I don't know how much she relates it. I'm afraid it's all of us who are relating things back, not her. And that's what always is going to happen. Because there's so much out in the public limelight, and there's so much out there, and of course that means that they reach more people, and then people complain about them and like both with her recipes, somebody would say, well, I've already made that recipe, or I do it better, or I do it differently, or it won't work the way she's doing it. All that sort of thing happens. And the further you go out into the limelight, the further you put your head above the parapet, as it were, the more you're likely to be attacked. And because she herself has attacked other people, it's kind of almost fair game to do so. Because I mean, that Oprah Winfrey interview that she did was really, she played some very heavy cards in that all those years ago. Well, I don't think we're going to see her expressing much sympathy with the CEO, Sophie Chandauka. I don't think she's going to be coming out in support of her. That I don't think is going to happen. But that's because of the situation. I think that even Prince Harry is probably only really, as actually we've sort of said before, peripherally involved in all this at this point, and because I mean, he was the founder, he was the person who got it all going. And he linked up with Prince Seso, who also lost his mother, and they were doing a good job between them. And he's a whatever he is, patron of it or whatever. So he's a sort of figurehead who can do a lot of good for the charity, and all this is going on around the charity, which is a great shame, and making it all very difficult. So I think it's not really a Meghan Markle issue, although I can see how it could be interpreted as such because she too has entered into this kind of argument about race.